Back at it here on a Tuesday night. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember we stream live Tuesdays, 8 or 9 p Central, 9 or 10 p on the East Coast is when you can catch us here on the 2D Football Podcast. Jeff Chadiha, NFL Network, Eric Eager, Sumer Sports, Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. We've got a lot to get to here. Chris Jones sending out a tweet when asked by a fan when he'll be in, said week 8. What does that mean for the Chiefs' chances of repeating? Are they torpedoed? That is something they're going to have to figure out at some point, whether or not he's going to be back and what it will do for him. Jonathan Taylor asked for a trade in Indy. Sam Howell shines on Monday Night Football as Washington figured out their quarterback situation finally. John Harbaugh can't decide if winning in the preseason matters. I'll explain. Aaron Rodgers is actually going to play in a preseason game. From Brady to Baker Mayfield, how bad can it get with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I guess we're going to find out this year. And, of course, we'll lead things off by previewing the NFC South. Old friend of at least my radio show, new friend of the pot, Chris Dimino from 680 The Fan in Atlanta, will join us. It's all coming up right now on the 2 Deep NFL Podcast.
You're listening to the 2 Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. 2 Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro was the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. 2 Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the 2 Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And welcome to, episode, wherever we are. I don't know where we're at, 90-something here on the 2 Deep Podcast. Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, Soren Petro with you, proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They have been nationally recognized as a full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor since 1994. Parking lot problems are no problem if you know Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Get your local seal coating done now before the weather turns. They're booking up fast. Go to GannAsphalt.com. And, gentlemen, of course, all your parking lot problems will be solved. Again, GannAsphalt.com. Jeff, Eric, we get ready to preview, let's be honest, the NFC South. I mean, does it get any bigger, Jeff, than previewing the NFC South? I mean, is it like I don't know how we didn't lead with them or close with them right before the season because of what we all expect from the NFC South, right?
Well, I'm grateful that we have a guest on here because if it's the three of us talking about it, it'd be a very short conversation. So somebody who's got the details and nuts and bolts of the NFC South to really turn to that we can pepper with questions it's going to be helpful tonight.
Eric, you usually can at least find an opportunity back in your gambling days when you were allowed to gamble. You would at least have found some good, wagers to get down on in the NFC South, right?
Yeah, I think my time was littered with losing bets to the Atlanta at the hands of the Falcons. Our numbers always liked the Falcons, and they always, from 2018 to now, were disappointing. But yeah, I mean, like there's opportunity here. I think, anytime a guy like Derek Carr is favored to win a division, there's opportunity other places in the betting market.
Is that what it comes down to? If Derek
I'm a well-traveled, well-read soul, and I've still only seen one Derek Carr playoff game.
Yeah, and that's I think that's what makes everybody in this division think that there is a great chance that they've got a shot, and everybody can feel like it, right? That hey, we're not gonna have to go out and really wow anyone. Let's welcome a man who has the joy of watching NFC South football on a regular basis. Great friend of mine, as I mentioned, Chris Dimino. Great sports talker, covering everything Atlanta sports for like at least 3 years, right? Don't let the gray hair fool you.
Yeah.
At least 3 years, right, Chris?
Yeah, listen, the NFC South, our slogan, why not us? I think that's just going to be the division slogan this year. I find myself with a tick more interest in the NFC South than I think you guys actually have. So who knows? Let's see where the hell this goes.
Well, let's start with this. We'll go. Usually by the way, we're running late tonight. I'll give you one guess on who we were all waiting on. The guy with the big hair, Eric Eager. It's always Eager that we're waiting on. No, it was actually me this time, so I apologize for being late tonight for everybody. I was the guy that was scrambling. But how about it? Are we selling this division short at all? I mean, is there any hope that there's a team that can emerge as a legitimate championship contender?
No, this sort of feels like, remember that line? What do they call the last person in medical school? Doctor. Yes. I mean, that somebody's going to go to the playoffs. I'm not really sure, and I don't want to do this publicly. I don't know who might run with this, somebody in my town or someplace up in New York. But when you win a division at 8-9, I think if you do that for a second year, there should be a petition to not have anybody go to the postseason. It sort of feels like you shouldn't get two of those types of seasons. So we'll find out if somebody can get to 9 wins in this division. It really is going to be a battle to get to 9 wins. I agree with the idea that Derek Carr is the sexiest thing about this division, other than perhaps Bijan Robinson, who you don't know what he's going to be. But I, quite honestly, sitting in Atlanta, I love the pick, and I feel really good about it because he's the type of guy, if it's only 9 or 10 wins, that could be a difference maker in this division, go or stay home at the end of it.
And by the way, I love the Derek Carr opinion. I don't buy it either. But everybody in the great city of Atlanta has been having a great time with that one Bijan Robinson run and the one-handed catch for about 4 yards. So I will say that the hype has been real here.
Geez, we're 3 minutes into this. First, I was going to congratulate you guys. Whenever you get to a number that you're not really sure what number you're actually on, good for you, because most don't get it anywhere into the 90s. And look, at the end of the day, you really, with the last couple of years here, trying to get over 500 and being in cap hell, you will take little victories. And whether Kyle Pitts coming back and be healthy, whether Drake London's ready to be a 1, Bijan Robinson is legit in the sense that I think he was the perfect guy to help the quarterback, because the one question that has to be answered, whether it's 6 games, 8 games, 10 games, is can Desmond Ridder play? And if he can't play with this around him, then you're going to know that you're going to go in a different direction. And you might do that as early as this year by putting Heineke into games.
That's a great place to start, Chris, as far as I'm concerned, because why do they believe so much in Desmond Ridder?
Boy, it's a really good question. I think the 4 games at the end of last year, look, here's the thing. He was on a learning curve that Marcus Mariota was not going to be an answer. And I'm flabbergasted. Quite honestly, I'm happy for him and his family that he might have a chance to still be in the NFL. But we think he quit around here. If you're a veteran and you're supposed to be a veteran, you don't leave when you got a rookie who might be now the guy in the room who's going to look to you for help, look to you on the sidelines during a game. The fact that Philadelphia is willing to take a chance on him, that one's a little bit surprising to me. I want to say it's attrition to some degree. You spent the 3rd-round pick on him, so you must think he can play. But there's nothing really else in the cupboard. And the 4 games last year, I think the belief is he just needs to be good. And I don't like, caretaker. I don't like all those sort of expressions that we beat around the bush when a guy might not be a guy who can win you a game. But it really does feel like with this team, what they've done getting out of cap hell, some guys on 1-year deals, this might be manageable for him with the talent around him. The big question with this team, and it's been this way for a few years, is how good is the offensive line going to be? How healthy will they stay? And at the end of the day, I don't expect him to get out of the pocket much, but can he make plays out of the pocket? Because at a certain point, this offensive line is probably going to face some defenses where he's going to be crowded in the backfield.
Everybody in Atlanta seems to like Arthur Smith. Everyone seems to think he is a good coach, and he just hadn't been able to do it. Is quarterback the only thing? We're going to talk about Sam Howell later in Washington. That, is quarterback the only thing that's been missing, or are there other things about his game as a coach that have to be tightened up?
So look, they had 13 penalties in a preseason game, and I'm not a big fan. We don't know what they're going to do Thursday night against the Steelers. I hope they play everybody. I hope it's a half, and I'd like to see him even come out at the end of halftime. But everybody keeps talking about you can't get guys hurt. I'm not a believer in playing less football. I mean, they took away a preseason game. I just thought that meant that, okay, all bets are off. Be ready to play football. And if they don't do that, coming off the game the other day, I think it was 16 plays by the offense, and it was an interception, 7 for 9. There was nothing really great about it. You joked it was a 12-yard run, and everybody went, yeah. And then you realize, okay, the game doesn't count, and it's 4 carries for 20 yards, and everybody was out of the game. People had headsets on and baseball caps. So I don't really know what you have. I just like the idea that they're out of cap hell. They lost too many one-score games, one-possession games last year. Your MVP for this team the last few years has been your kicker. That's never really a good sign. And at the end of the day, there was things that they had to shore up because scoring 20 a game with this defense was not going to win you enough games to go to the postseason. They hope they've cleaned up some of that stuff.
By the way, I butchered the order, so I apologize for stepping on Eric.
Yeah, I mean, still an issue at pass rush, right? When you look at this team, they've done, I think, a decent job of building the defense, which is the defense for the Atlanta Falcons hasn't been in the top half of the league in expected points added since 2012. So we're talking about a team, even with a Super Bowl run, that hasn't had a good defense for a long time. And
can't get to the quarterback.
And they had a quarterback. Yeah, exactly. And so you look at the middle of the defense with Onyemata, with Campbell, with Bates. On the outside, some speculation. I mean, AJ Terrell was terrific in 21. In 22, it was not quite as good, although I think he's still a fantastic player. When you look at this defense, easiest schedule in the NFL per my metrics. So is the defense good enough to leverage a soft schedule and to give that environment to Desmond Ridder that you're talking about?
So I was here when they got Ray. I was here for a lot of this. I was here for a lot of good and bad. I did the pre and post for 10 years. And there were some years that it was, hey, look at us. And there were other years where it was like, oh, God, 5 more of these. And that's sort of been what it's felt like around here. The good news is I haven't been burned the last 2 years. When they won 7 games, 7 and 10, I'm not kidding about this. I walked in day one and said, hey, fellas, if you're going to get angry on Sunday nights and text me, or if we're going to come into the show on Monday and you're going to be banging your head against the desk, I'm out. I'm not emotionally invested that way because I didn't think it was a good team. They weren't deep enough. They had cap problems that were absolutely going to play on the field. Calais Campbell, Ray Edwards came, and Ray Edwards looked like Tarzan. But Ray Edwards wanted to be an underwear model. So when you get guys that are supposed to play the part and they don't, you got a problem. And then if you got guys like that who sort of Piper with some younger guys, you got a real problem. Calais Campbell has got to be a dude. Grady Jarrett's a dude. Calais Campbell has got to be a dude. So up front, they can keep their linebackers, which has not been a good core for the last plus years, 5 or so. They're going to have to keep those guys clean to try to make plays upfield instead of trying to back up and knock a guy down after 6 and 7 yards.
Let's go to New Orleans, where they've still got a pretty good defense there. But the question last year was just the offense got anemic at times. How big of a boost do they get from Derek Carr being there? I know Kamara's hurt and Michael Thomas is coming back, but what are you expecting from them offensively?
I'm expecting a lot more. Look, I don't know. And it's funny, you talk about the one playoff game for Derek Carr, and that's the thing. When you're this many years in the league and you've gotten paid what he got paid, and you're out of a place, but you think it's a better place in the division that's not very good, you better be the guy. If Derek Carr is not the guy in this division this year, then it was a bad decision by them because the division's here for the taking. Now, whether you do anything if you get to the postseason by winning 9 or 10 games, I don't know. That's going to be up to him, and we'll find out if he's a money-type quarterback. I just think Derek Carr is the sexiest guy in this division, and that'll tell you a little bit about the division. But sexy doesn't equate to he's ready to come and control the whole thing. I buy him more than any other guy that's going to play quarterback, including Bryce Young on whatever they do down in Tampa and whatever they're doing here in Atlanta. But he's going to have to go prove it because what is he, 10 years into his career now? This is the time. You don't get more chances than this. And he's got a defense that I still think is the best defense in the division on top of that. So he should get help. He should see the football a little bit more than some of these other quarterbacks in this division.
Listen, in the Saints cap problem, I mean, I would think everybody in that division is salivating over the fact that they never have just gutted the cap issues, right? You talk about Atlanta getting out from under the cap. The Saints just keep pushing it off, and never get appreciably better. They pushed off enough to get Derek Carr, but like that team is no threat anytime soon, right?
Well, they're wide receivers. You had a couple of guys who can play, and all of a sudden they were gone. They were banged up. And if you don't really, if you don't give him weapons, you don't have a running game because their running game, which has always been pound, they've been pretty good at that. I'm not sure if they're going to be good at that this year, and they probably need it to be if Derek Carr is going to be a guy. I don't think he can do it on his own. I'm not sure if the wideouts can really do it on their own either. So he's going to need a running game. I'm not sure they have it. It's funny. You guys remember the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High? And there's that scene where they're at a restaurant, and he just keeps ordering sodas because he doesn't have his wallet. And we all know this about the cap in the NFL. Eventually, the bill comes due. Like, they're going to put a bill. They're going to start turning out the lights and let it put a bill at you. The Falcons, the best thing they did, if nothing else for this year that gives me hope, is they've cleaned up that. You had a fight with Matt Ryan. He had to go away. You got a 3rd-round pick starting as your quarterback. That's not ideal. But at least it feels like they're out of the cap hell. Then I agree with you. They keep pushing that rock down the road. And at some point, somebody's going to tell you no more. You have to pay. And the Falcons spent the last 2 years doing just that.
Yeah, I love it. Damone, Chris Dimino says, Damone is going to show up.
With the wallet.
It's not showing up with the cap wallet there to pull out the Ratner, the New Orleans Saints. I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about the Saints. And the weird thing is you have these teams sort of, it's kind of sexy to do void years and to push things into the future and to kind of do what the Saints have been doing. The problem is I think the other teams like, Philadelphia, for example, very similar cap wise. Mm-hmm. But I think that the problem is that the Saints don't have really a plan, and they've had uncertainty that has come about that shows why that is similar for the Falcons too. It's like injuries and age can really screw up those plans, right? If Michael Thomas wasn't levering the Saints up for years and years and years, he'd be gone by now. The only reason he's still there is because he was on the books and they couldn't get rid of him forever. And I think about this defense. Jeff's right. They're one of the better defenses in the entire league. But you think about Demario Davis is 34. Cam Jordan's been around forever. Marshawn Lattimore's not that old yet, but he's old for a corner. Like, you look at this defense, all the premier players are on the older side. And what's happened since they were that 13-3 1 seed type team is they used to have a defense where they bring in like backups that were starters. And now their starters are still good, but they have no depth because of the salary cap hell they're in, and all their starters are old. Do you see that? Like, that's the thing where it's like Derek Carr's always been a quarterback that's needed everything to go right for his team to have success. And I see this as a big red flag. It's like this could go wrong, and Derek Carr's left with excuses again on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, look, I think it's up to a coaching staff to sort of put Band-Aids on some of this stuff over the course of a season. When you know what you're lacking, you're supposed to, hey, what do we do well? What do I have to stay away from? Again, the Falcons, if you're going to score 20 or 21 points a game, you better have a defense that's better than this one's been. I feel that's way about the division. I'm kind of curious, and I'll ask you guys, who do you think the best coach in this division is? Because, when you're talking about having to win 9 games and maybe going to the postseason, there's going to be a clock management thing. You do well or you don't. There's going to be a decision, go for it or not. Do I know the room on a given day when today's the day my offensive line is pushing people around? We're going to go for it on 4th and 3, and we're going to live or die with that decision. I'm not sure who the best coaching staff is. I feel okay about mine. He's not a T-shirt guy. He doesn't want to do post-game interviews, doesn't want to do pre-game interviews, doesn't want to do stuff on Wednesday, and I'm cool with that. Like, I don't really care. I don't need a guy to win the press conference. I think he's good enough from what you saw in Tennessee and how they found 7 wins to make me feel like he might be the guy in the division. But I don't know who you guys think. Who has the advantage on the sidelines? Like, there are certain coaches, you guys know this better than me, that if they stood at midfield and you look to your left and you look to your right, how often is that guy on either side definitively got an advantage? I don't know if anybody in this division has an advantage over anybody else, and you're going to play 6 games against these teams.
Yeah.
Well, Carolina would tell you it's Frank Reich. And I want to go there next because you brought up Bryce Young. They made a lot of moves in the offseason with the supporting cast around and Miles Sanders, Hayden Hurst, DJ Chark. Did they put enough around Bryce Young for this team to be competitive, to compete for a champ, compete for a division crown?
Did you guys see the beginning of the press conference the other day where a guy who I'm assuming works for the team walked up to the microphone and he said live into the mic, I'm 5'9", I'm 5'9". Is this going to cover him? And he was playing lower in the microphone. Bryce Young walked up to the microphone and was like, I think this guy's supposed to be on our side, isn't he? And it was like one of those where you just go, oh, yeah. One of the things they say about him is what's going to happen if he gets hit by men? And playing in the SEC it's a man's league. But what's going to happen if he gets hit by men? And what's going to happen if he has to make plays with his legs and puts himself into that Cam Newton territory? Totally different builds. But if you're out on the outside too often, I don't care how big or small you are, you're going to get beat up in this league. It'll be interesting to see if he's physically able to do it. I think, you don't come out of Alabama without knowing what it is you want to do daily in practice. I think he's going to be prepared to practice, which is a big thing when you're a rookie. I just know physically he's going to take the beating that in all likelihood you're going to take because I'm sending people at him. I mean, he might get around me some point, but I think I can push him out. Then I'm going to get free shots on him. And I'm not a headhunter. But I know that whether it's a receiver over the middle or a quarterback who you bang up and he can't play as well in the third and the fourth quarter, I think that's going to be what people want to find out is how tough is he going to be.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead. I think when I look at Reich, though, I think about the number of different ways that he's been able to generate success. And, we all watch Carson Wentz and we're like, in the moment, it was like, well, duh, Carson Wentz is this big, strong thing that, is able to wing the ball on third down and everything. And then, Wentz leaves the nest of Frank Reich and he's pretty bad. I think last year we all had a bad taste in our mouth about Reich because of all of the dysfunction in Indianapolis. But, the guys, you talk about game management, you talk about clock management, he laps most of the league, right? He's in like that Harbaugh and he's in that Harbaugh tier. The question mark about the quarterback is legit. And I think that's where this is such a great question because it is going to require a great coaching job by Frank Reich to keep people off of Bryce Young. And that to me is the biggest question. It's a huge question, but I do think Frank Reich, at least in his past, has been capable of elevating quarterbacks that haven't been that good.
Can I ask you guys one other question? The other part is how much of your playbook do you get to use with a young guy? Frank Reich, I'm assuming he's got I'm assuming it's a pretty thick playbook. I don't think you're around for as many years as he's been around with the quarterbacks he's been around. But do I have this to work with or do I have this to work with because he's not really ready for the whole thing? And I think that's the other part. You better figure out what you're good at if you're not going to have the entire playbook. And I think that's the other part of Frank Reich's job is I'm sure Bryce Young was in the class. Again, you don't go to Alabama and play for Nick Saban and not be ready to play football like on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But I just don't know with young guys how much you could actually say, here it is. We got a lot to choose from on a given day.
Let's wrap it up with the Bucs, Chris. Baker Mayfield, Tommy put the thing up here. I assume this is right. Has played in 2 playoff games, more than all the quarterbacks in the division combined, because there's one just for Carter. I mean, that's amazing. Like everyone would be like, oh my God, no one in Tampa wants to buy tickets because they've gone from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield as the starting quarterback, but he has been successful. Is there any chance that Tampa is a place where he can resurrect that success?
I'm not being callous about this, and I'm not even kidding. I was just reading the stuff about his money. Now, again, I know you guys know you get to the field and it could be nothing about football. Yeah, it's got to be all about football. It can't be about your outside life. If somebody took $12 million from me, allegedly, then I think I've got to make sure that I snap out of it. I got to kiss my wife in the morning and go, are we good? Because you're coming home to stuff that's a little bit heady. And I swear to you, I'm not even I'm not joking about this. You've got to be ready to play. I don't know what Baker Mayfield is. It's interesting. The most that I've read about Tampa, and tell me if I'm crazy, is the throwback cream school uniforms. Like I think they're relying on that as the headline. And I kind of think, without being a smartass, I think that's a dangerous place to be. Is that they're saying, hey man, I don't know how good we're going to be, but how about these uniforms? And it sort of feels like that's been pimped, maybe as much as anything else on this team.
Yeah, I love it. Buccaneer Bruce is their key. All right, who wins the division with what record? We'll leave it with that.
Okay, I'm going to do this because I'm going to play against Derek Carr. I think the Falcons win 9 games. I do. And here's why. I love the kicker, and I just, again, it's not great that he's been the MVP. He really has been the MVP. If they were giving out cards at the end of this, I swear to you. But at least I know he can nut up and go make a kick. And this team's going to be in 1-possession games. They've got to get it to 25 a game. They can't play in the 20-21. They're going to have to get to 25 or 26. I think they're going to do that. I really honestly think the offense, with what they've done in the last 3 years, gets them to a tick under 4 touchdowns. And I think that's going to be enough. And I'm not a homer. Soren, you know this. I mean, I've bagged on everybody in this town. I've been called to every principal's office this entire town has. I just think the division is ripe for the taking. And they won 7 games the last 2 years, and I couldn't figure out how. I'm just looking for 2 more, and I think that's possible.
Yeah, I love it. We're picking the divisions based upon the kicker. That's where the NFC South is.
This is true attrition, fellas. This is attrition, but somebody's going to win.
I love it. Chris, great stuff, man. Always love talking to you. Thanks for giving us some wisdom on the NFC South. We'll talk to you again down the road, buddy.
And I hope your interest gets generated at some point over the course of the season where it's not so bad to just watch a random NFC South football game for you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. We appreciate it, buddy.
Take care.
All right, Chris Dimino. He's one of the absolute best when it comes to the sports talk world. Always great to talk with him. And it's going to come down to a kicker. boys. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. The NFC South is coming down to a kicker. I think you can say that, expectations. 9 wins. You got the Falcons winning the division with 9 wins. Jeff, where are you thinking on the NFC South?
He's really out there, over his skis with that one, huh? Yeah.
I mean, that's
2 more. Look, it's a toss-up division. I mean, it's the Saints probably the best team on paper to me, but I agree that things could go wrong there with injuries, and I think the best team in this division is going to be a 9-win team. So why not them? I mean, it really is. They got as much chance as anybody else. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, he acted like that was a big thing. Like their betting market number is 8.5, over is like -140. So yeah, like they could win 9 games. I think that I'm sticking with my pick. I'm sticking with Carolina. I think Frank Reich's good, and I think Jeff's point when he brought it up was right. Like they put people around him, Bryce Young, to at least make this thing passable. He could always come out and look terrible, but I like the Panthers just because of the coach and they do have one of the easier schedules in the league as well.
Yeah, I'm on Carolina as well, and I think maybe that's partially just because I like the return. Plus 340, I think, is what I saw it at on, and that was what gives me that there's a payoff to it. And I like Frank Reich, but I think Arthur Smith. Everyone in Atlanta loves him, some Arthur Smith, and if they're right, then this should be the year. He should have his guy in place, and it should be the year, and they get it done. I think it's either the Panthers, and if it's not the Panthers, I think it's the Falcons when it's all said and done. All right, we got a lot to get to here. We're always brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Remember, free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project, every single one, comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays, costly expenses, and lets you get back to business. Go to GannAsphalt.com for anything regarding with the parking lot. Jeff, let's start with Chris Jones. His holdout continues. There are 2 preseason games in Kansas City. Chris Jones still a no-show. What does this do? The Chiefs are the odds-on favorite to repeat. They remain that last time I looked at the Super Bowl odds. Should they be? Or should the bus start backing up? Should we hear beeping out of Kansas City that somebody else should be moving into that favorites role with Jones still out at this point?
Well, I don't think it should change that aspect of their season right now. I mean, I'm not picking them to repeat because I don't pick teams to repeat. I think it's tough when last year they won 7 games, but 7 games that were decided by 6 points or less. And so Eric can give you the stats on how that changes over the course of the season. But the chemistry in the locker room is going to be different. I can promise you that much, because now we know this is serious. And I think, you mentioned you thought it was going to be didn't want to go to St. Joe for training camp type thing. And I think a lot of people feel like, well, he's just making a statement. Like, now emotions come into it. And if you're still sitting out at this point of training camp, of the off season, you want your money. And I'm guessing that by what he said on Twitter recently, we talked about, I don't know if he was trolling the guy or not, but week 8, he threw that out there as the time he can come back. I think he's all about getting that money now. And if he can't get it, he's going to make them pay for not giving it to him. And so, I can see him missing games now.
Yeah, week 8, and guys use Twitter to just like, I'm just blowing up. I'm just joking around. Whatever. Is that the last desperate attempt to show leverage against the Kansas City Chiefs? And he's a day or 2 away from coming in, Eric, or do you think that's the plan? Come in week 8, practice for a couple of weeks, play the last 6 games, accrue another season, and look to get out there on the open market next year. What do you think happens?
We talked about this last week. Like I don't think there is a plan, because his agent seems, and I don't mean to disparage, his agent doesn't appear to be giving him great counsel here. Like, and we talked about like kind of one player agents. I know the Katz brothers have more than just him, but he's the only one worth anything. And it's like, when that happens, these guys, they're not in good faith. Like, so I think anything could happen. I personally, I don't think that they've talked in a long time. Like, this is similar to the Orlando Brown thing, where everybody's like, the day-to-day negotiations, it's like that no one's answering the phone. And in fact, I think something like that, I mean, is Chris's way of like acting out to get people's attention. I'm guessing that, every once in a while they check in on his agent, and his agent says, no, what we're asking for hasn't changed. They're like, okay, we'll talk to you later. And then they don't talk for a while. And Chris, is probably trying to get their attention.
Yeah, all right, that's what it feels like to me. The tweets today as we tape here on a Tuesday, it's like, hey, remember, I'm over here. I'll do it. I'll hold out. Watch me. I'll hold out till week 8. I mean, we immediately put it on the radio. He knows it's going on the radio as soon as it's out there. It goes viral amongst all Chiefs fans, and the Chiefs hear it. I don't get a sense that they're panicking at this point, Jeff. Do you? I mean, do you think? To me, what I see today is I would have sat down with everybody involved. How long does he need to get ready? By what date does he need to be in? And to be full go. 2 days before that, I give my last best offer. Okay, what does he need to just get on the field and at least be a situational pass rusher for us to start the year? Okay, he needs 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I talked to Tim Grunhard about this. He said 2 weeks. I said, okay. Then 2 days before that, I tell him, my last best offer is still my last best offer, and it gets pulled in 2 days. And I would pull it and say, we're playing to the end at this point. That's how I would handle it. How do you think Brett Veach will handle it?
I think there's panic now. I think they're concerned about this because there's no finish line. Now it's like, let's just see who gives first, right? I mean, it's not like there's some data out there that's coming up where you can say, well, he's got to be on at this point for it to make sense. I mean, look, I said this on the radio this morning, your station. Like, Trent Williams sat out 10 games and wound up being the highest paid left tackle in the history of football.
2 years later, though.
Still, it worked out for him.
Yes.
I'm just saying that Chris Jones is not thinking about this like, well, when can I get in and be ready to play football? And how is this going to work out? And how can I help the team? Chris Jones is thinking about Chris Jones right now. And so what you're saying is rational from the Chiefs' point of view. But I guarantee you there's no one in that building right now who knows when he's going to show up. And so that would be, when you're in training camp and you're going through the motions, you got all this time, you can say, well, yeah, we'll figure it out. Now we're 2 weeks away from the season starting, and there's still no indication that he wants to come in and play, and you haven't done anything to sweeten the deal to make him want to play. Like, I know you think they have all the leverage here, but I think he's got a lot of leverage, and I think he knows that.
Okay, Eric.
Can I push back?
Go
ahead, Petro.
Well, I was just going to say, polishing a third trophy, second one with this regime.
He's not thinking about that.
No, I'm saying the organization.
Yeah.
The organization polishing their third Super Bowl trophy, the second one that this group, Clark Hunt, Andy Reid, Brett Veach brought them. They've never had more clout and leverage as far as with their fans or equity. Let's not say leverage. Let's say equity with their fans than right now, right, Eric? I mean,
yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like the big thing, and again, these are not similar situations, and we know that the Chiefs offered Tyreek a ton of money and he didn't take it, and then they traded him. They didn't. It wasn't. Let's not over-index on that, but. Last season, paying the quarterback 17% of the cap, first ever Super Bowl title, doing that, trading your second, third, or fourth best player, depending on, and winning a Super Bowl. This team is not desperate for anything pertaining to 2023. I can guarantee, to me, when I think about this team, everybody's all talking about this year as if they're in a perfect situation. If they win the Super Bowl, they win the Super Bowl. Amazing. No one, Petro, remember that?
Do you think they win Super Bowl with Chris Jones unhappy or uninspired?
But do they win a Super Bowl if they pay Chris Jones $35 million a year when he declines via age? That's what they're that's over their head for 4 years.
No, but I agree with that. I'm just saying they don't win their championship without Chris Jones. That's what Chris Jones' argument is. I'm a part of this too.
And I think Sam said this on your show when Todd was in Monday. He's like, both sides have great points. It's not a situation where if you're Chris Jones, that is your point of view is I'm making this team win. The issue to me is, again, this team does not need to win the Super Bowl any given year now. No more Scott Kaczmar tweeting about what if Mahomes is a failure. All this. No, he's won 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. Every single year, specific year. Let Buffalo over-index on 2023. Let the Jets over-index on 2023. You're out here. You got to make decisions to win 3 of the next 8 Super Bowls. And if this one's not the year, so be it.
I will have more on Chris Jones in our Red, Gold, and Bold Chiefs podcast that's coming up later tonight. If you're catching us live on the stream, you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. If you're catching us via the podcast, let's turn the corner. Let's talk about Jonathan Taylor, Jeff. Been given permission to seek a trade. Whoop-dee. I don't get it. Like, nobody wants to pay the running. That sounds great, but Jonathan Taylor and his agent, they're going to find someone who will, A, pay him what he wants to be paid, and B, all the Colts got to do is go, nope, not enough. Like, where does this go?
Yeah, and I think it's similar to Chris Jones. I think all these situations are linked in some way, whether it's Zach Martin in Dallas or Chris Jones here or what Jonathan Taylor. I think a lot of players are starting to feel like, okay, we need to start flexing. We need to start letting people know that we have a big role to play in what happens with these teams. It's not just like a machine and it keeps moving without us doing our part. I expect, it's interesting because you're right, Jonathan Taylor being a running back, that's a hard place to make money. But there also are teams now who are really close to winning championships or feeling like they're in the market to win championships that can look at him. He's a good enough player to where you can see somebody making a move. What they're asking for him in return, it seems unreasonable to get something done. I don't think anybody's giving up a first-round pick for him. But if it's at that stage now where he wants to leave and they want him to go, and I felt throughout training camp, this whole thing has been about him just passively aggressively, just letting them know, I want out of here. I'm going home to rehab. I'm disappearing on you. This is going to be the way the season goes, and you're trying to get a young quarterback going. It's probably best to make the best deal possible and move him on.
Eric, what do you think happens?
I mean, is Jonathan Taylor going to find what he's looking for, though, is the issue. Because the issue isn't like would a team trade a second-round pick for him? Probably. But that team's not going to – like if the Giants aren't willing to pay Saquon, more than 10, 12 million a year, if the the Cowboys with Tony Pollard, the Raiders with Josh Jacobs, like, and granted, Taylor is better than some of those guys most years, but it's like if they trade him to a team that's good, that team by virtue of being good is probably also somewhat smart, and they're probably not going to pay a running back, right? Like, so it's tough because you look at the teams, like, is Philadelphia after getting Swift and Penny, are they going to trade a big pick for him? Kansas City doesn't have the money. You keep going down the list of great teams. It's like he might get traded there, but is he going to get what he's looking for, which is another contract? Probably not. And so he must like just really hate Indianapolis, which I understand, but he must just really hate that place. If now it's like, I can't get a contract here, I probably can't get a contract anywhere. I just want to move anyway.
I think you got to look for the teams that are, 20, 30 years or have never won a championship, right? That's Bills, that's Vikings, it's those. Go ahead.
The Bills get linked to a running back every single year.
I didn't say that they're on it because I like James Cook, so I don't think the Bills would be interested. I think they like their running back situation already. I'm just saying that the only teams that are going to give you anything of significance for a running back and then use a bunch of cap room on a running back are teams that feel like we have to get it done. You've got to be looking at GMs, coaches on their last leg, and franchises. I feel like they got to, at least if they don't win it, show their fan base they did everything they could. Otherwise, I don't see where there's a market. I definitely don't think there's a bidding war, and that's why I don't think the Colts get what they want. And Jim Irsay is not going to look at it logically because what has he ever done that's logical? He's going to look at it from a position of strength. I think they did it to appease him, but I don't know. I don't see him moving. Let's talk about Sam Howell and the Commanders. We'll get to the Ravens portion of this in a minute. But Sam Howell went 19 of 25 for 188, 2 touchdowns and no INTs. Eric Bieniemy, by the way, coordinating the offense of the Commanders. Tip of the cap to him. Knocking off the Ravens, ending their 24-game preseason win streak. Sam Howell, the answer in Washington. The Commanders found their guy.
I'm still in wait and see mode, but I was encouraged by what I saw in that game, of what he did in that game, because he had a couple plays early on where he took a bad sack, and he came back and hit a guy on third down, third and long, which was impressive. I thought that Bieniemy called a really good game. I liked a lot of the things they were doing as far as variety and spreading the football around, and the formations were a lot more wide open. With him, you kind of expect more of a hammer the football, play action type system. It was a lot more like the Chiefs are out there playing. They've got a good supporting cast around the kid. But I'm still like, he was a 4th round pick. He beat out Jacoby Brissett. This team has had a long history of struggling at the quarterback position. I'm going to reserve judgment until he's played 6 or 7 games, but he was better than I thought he would be.
I think that's fair. And listen, we see more and more first-round picks are what go deep into the Super Bowl. Eric, although Brock Purdy was just Mr. Irrelevant last year, played at a high level. Sam Howell was in the running going into the season to be the number 1 overall pick. He was very highly thought of before that last year at Carolina. What is he? The guy who, it looks like a starter and looks like what he did after his, junior year, or the guy he played his last year at Carolina?
Yeah, if you take out sacks, he rushed for 1,100 yards his final year in North Carolina, 11 touchdowns on the ground. That covered up a little bit of the bad, his regression as a passer. I'm cool with, look, a lot of the guys, you think about who have been some quarterbacks that we've missed on. Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was a better player earlier in his college career than later. Brock Purdy, same guy. Brock Purdy was a better freshman than he was a senior at Iowa State. And so I'm willing, at least, when I look, and by the way, Jordan Love is going to be good. I've seen enough. Jordan Love was better in 2018 than he was in 2019. And you kind of look at, I'm willing to sort of say, look, Sam Howell is pretty damn good at times for North Carolina, and I can see him being good now. The one thing I did notice, a couple things. Ravens, not a great defense anymore, and they were playing their backups. So you have to, I think, adjust for that. I do really like Jahan Dotson. I do really like Terry McLaurin. That is a great combination. The running backs are good as well. Offensive line's okay. They're probably an injury away from being bad. But the Ravens didn't have many starters out there. However, they did throw the kitchen sink, rushing the passer and blitzes and stunts and all that. And Washington did a wonderful job of picking that stuff up. And in the times that they didn't, Sam Howell was able to move around in the pocket. I think that there is a sliver of a winning formula there for Bieniemy, Howell, and the Commanders. And it was fun watching them. I thought, again, when you have good wide receivers, you have an opportunity to be a decent offense, and they have great wide receivers in my estimation.
Yeah, that's true. Let's go to the other side of that equation, and that's John Harbaugh on the 24-game win streak that came to an end. And he was pretty fired up after the game. I want to play this for you. This is Harbaugh talking about post-game. I don't know if everybody saw one of the commander, who was it, Sam Cosmi, the offensive lineman, who was talking about whatever. I think the streak is stupid, but we'll beat them. They celebrated afterwards. Here's Jim Harbaugh's comments post-game about, the streak ending and I guess what he perceives as people's opinion of it.
Think about something like that. And I just told our guys, you're proud of it, of course, you appreciate it. But the thing that you're proud of is all those games are mostly just like that. Preseason games that people want to write about, some of you in here want to write about and say they don't mean anything because you never played the game. You never were out there in a preseason game. You never were fighting for a spot on the team. And yet you have the audacity to say that the effort that somebody puts into that to win and fight and win a game like that is meaningless. Tell me it was meaningless out there, what you just saw. If you like football, is that a meaningless football game? I can't respect anybody that says that because of the effort these guys put into it. That's what you're proud of. And that's why I'm so proud of these guys for the way they fought. It doesn't matter win or loss. It matters the way they went about their business tonight. And I'm proud of them for that, always will be.
All right, a couple of things there. One, I want to play you 2 snippets. This is within that. I wanted to play the whole thing. There's the whole thing with Jim Harbaugh. Now I'm going to play for you something he said early.
Tell me it was meaningless out there, what you just saw. If you like football, is that a meaningless football game? I can't respect anybody that says that.
Okay. Now what he says late.
It doesn't matter win or loss. It matters the way they went about their business tonight.
I caught that.
It's just
in real time.
One answer. He chastised everybody in the media, which is such a straw man argument because he's looking at individuals and probably it's.
How did you know Petro never played?
It's probably Twitter. Yeah, and I love and you never played. Neither did John Harbaugh in the NFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where that BS comes from. Anyway, but in that one answer, he chastises everybody about how it matters, and in that same answer, he says it doesn't matter if you win or lose.
Yeah.
It just shows to me the neurotic, insecure nature of NFL head coaches. I love John Harbaugh as a coach. When the Ravens when people in Baltimore were talking about running him a few years ago before Lamar Jackson came on and they got rolling again, I was like, this will be the hottest guy in coaching. Just like Andy Reid was the hottest guy in coaching when the Eagles walked on him. But that kind of stuff just shows, Jeff. I mean, what? Come on. You know what people are saying. The streak doesn't matter because it doesn't win you a championship. And even though you've won one, they're already in Baltimore, tapping their toes like, when's the next one?
Yeah, that's a perfect example of somebody who had too many agendas in one comment and wanted to take on 5 different fights at once. And he talked himself into knots. And I understand what he was trying to say, which is that these games do matter to the people who are out here every day competing to make an NFL roster. And these guys, these coaches, when you're around these training camps and you're spending and you're seeing, whether you look at it in Kansas City, like there's what is it? There's Matt Bushman, there's this Deneric Prince, there's this Echo Boydo. These coaches, they kind of fall in love with these kids and they root for them. And so, and they want to see them succeed, but they also know they can't all make the roster. And so if John Harbaugh just said, look, these games are important because there's guys out here trying to keep their dreams alive. And we've done a great job of winning games, but more importantly, this is how we want to compete. If he had said that, that'd been enough. But he just kind of created a word salad and took off with it and wanted to call people out for their athletic careers. And it just all went down in a blaze of glory. It was just, he talked too long.
Yeah, he talked too long. That's it. I mean, the bottom line is I do get it. And you put all this time and effort and energy into it. I was watching a Matt LaFleur locker room speech after a game where he's all choked up. I do get how competitive they are, how much they put into it, rooting for the guys, not wanting their efforts out on the field, which are going to be great moments that they're going to tell their kids about. They're going to save the jersey, maybe the helmet, have it. I was on the field. I played there. I played against that guy. It's going to be wonderful stuff. But there's also the big picture of it, Eric. The fans don't care about that kind of stuff. I mean, they do, and you can't ask everybody to judge the game the way you judge it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I'm if you like preseason football, I know people who bet thousands of dollars on preseason football. So like, far be it from me. I'm not like going to kink shame people who like preseason NFL football, but the reality of the situation is what we saw last night. Awesome game. Fun game to watch Washington win. Terry McLaurin went down, and that's the only thing that mattered about that game. And so, like, to me, it's the injury thing that kind of makes me a little, when I look at preseason games, I think of them maybe not as important. Although I'm pro preseason, I just think you get in the joint practices do not simulate it. I don't think so. I'm pro preseason. I have a hard time with people who are just like, have a huge opinion about it. I just think of it as a necessary evil for these players.
Yeah, that's probably where it goes. All right, Jeff, let's wrap with this, and that is the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to play a preseason game. What's your takeaway from that?
It's a good idea. When he was in Green Bay, he'd been there forever, knew the offense, knew what the game plans were going to be. Not a lot of gain in having him out there. He's never thrown a pass in a meaningful game to a receiver, never sat behind that offensive line and had to see if they could protect him. It's better to go through this now than to get into week 1 against the Bills and think, okay, now we got some serious problems. At the very least, they can see how it all works together. Don't want to put him in harm's way, but I'm sure he had to sign off on this, or maybe it was his idea. But I like it because Aaron Rodgers, for as much as we've talked about him and all the crazy stuff he did in Green Bay, he's been a good soldier, been a great soldier for the Jets, and this is one more example of him doing so. I think it's a good move for him.
Robert Salah said we're not going to play scared football, Eric. That's the way he put it, and about him going out there. Then he said, hey, other teams are playing guys. He pointed to the Chiefs that they're playing guys. That's the team that everybody's chasing. Was it finally a coach stood up to him? Was it Aaron Rodgers wants to, now, hey, if you come to New York, you got a new boss, you got to impress. And so, by next year, Rodgers will be, back smoking a stogie during the preseason or what?
Did they play scared football the first 2 games? I'm just trying to check.
I guess by that estimation, it would be.
Well,
yes.
I just don't think there's any one solution, right? The Chiefs have been like one of, if not the most healthy teams in football the last 2 years, and they beat guys up in August. And then when you look at like the Rams, for example, like statistically until last season were one of the healthier teams in all of football, and they don't play their guys at all. So like, injuries are one of the more unknown. injuries are one of the more unpredictable things in all of football. And it's just like maybe Rodgers woke up and was like, it's sort of like you wake up and you do the dishes one morning because you feel like I want to be nice, I want to do something nice for somebody else. And it's like he wakes up in the morning, he's like, you know what? Maybe I'll play that preseason game. Maybe Dale from East Rutherford is going to come and watch the one game he's ever going to watch for the Jets. And I don't know, who knows what inspires Aaron Rodgers at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. It'll be interesting. He better not get hurt though. After all the consternation about it, that's the one thing he's got to come out and get free of all that. Or what will ESPN do all morning with their programming? No offense, I'm a fan, but there's a lot of jet talk. I
think so.
When not Richard Seymour, but who is the cornerback for the Giants? Jason Sehorn, when he tore his ACL running back that kick because Jim Fossil wanted to get cute in the preseason. Like that was on sport. I mean, nothing's changed. It is when a guy gets injured in the preseason, it's always going to look back at as being a dumb decision.
Remember, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete with no commissions, in-house crews, free consultations, every project coming with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Wide risk accidents, liability problems in your parking lot, get it restriped, brightly restriped right now. Cut down on those problems in the lot. Keep away the liability issues. Keep your parking lot as safe as possible, whether it's building brand new or just solving problems, whether it's one location or many. Gann Asphalt and Concrete has you covered. Find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Soren Petro with you, saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Two Deep NFL